Chapter 2 is going to be about communication and culture. So for this chapter, we're going to talk about cultures and co-cultures. So you have a culture that you're a part of, and you can also have various other cultures that you're a part of. When you think of culture, I don't want you just to think of skin tone or race. It's more than that. It could be if you love riding horses, if you love swimming, if you love, like if you're a foodie, all those things could be part of a culture. The American culture, just all of it. We're also going to talk about how culture affects communication because people from different areas or different places, different cultures may interpret or perceive things differently. And we talked about that a lot in chapter 1, how important it is to speak in a way that people understand you. And then also communicating with cultural awareness. And that's going to be very important as a healthcare professional to keep people's cultures in mind when it comes to dealing with them, their body, and their own person. So culture is the totality of learned, shared symbols, language, values, and norms that distinguish one group of people from another. So basically, it's anything that brings you together with another group of people, or into a group of people. It's anything that you have in common with them. It could be when I was younger, people used to wear Vans a lot, those tennis shoes. So if you wear Vans a lot, I think that's more of a California cultural thing. Where I'm from, we call them beanies, but people out here call them toboggans. So I had to learn that as far as cultural lingo and things like that. So anything that basically brings you together with someone else. So societies are groups of people who share common cultures, and that is plural. So it'll be various. So if you think of America, we celebrate certain holidays. Winter holidays are big out here, so Christmas is big. Even if people don't fully believe in Christmas, they might believe in, if they don't believe in the religious background of Christmas, they might still participate in the gift giving, or some people celebrate Friendsgiving, people call it Nativesgiving, Thanksgiving, Native Appreciation Day, some people celebrate Columbus, so it just depends on the people, but all of that brings us together as far as the American culture. So in-groups and out-groups. So in-groups are groups we identify with, and out-groups are groups that we don't identify with. So for an in-group, I could be part of Californians, since I'm from California. I could be part of Black people because I am Black. An out-group would be maybe as far as being a Buddhist, since I'm not a Buddhist, so that would be an out-group for me. And then also, I've never lived in Florida, so I would not be a Floridian. So that would be an out group. So we acquire our culture. So culture is different than ethnicity. Culture is different from nationality. So if you take the group of Asians, so people that come from the continent of Asia, so their ethnicity could be that they are technically Asian. I'm using quotations because if you're in America, yeah, I consider everyone American. So their nationality would also be American. Some people have dual nationalities, so they might be from Italy but also live in America, so they could consider themselves Italian American or just American or Italian. It just depends on the person. Ethnicity is kind of difficult because we use that word interchangeably with culture, but ethnicity and culture are different. And then enculturation is the process of acquiring a culture. So if you moved from, South Africa to the United States, then the person would have to learn to adapt to some of the American ways, just because we do some things differently as far as our food and some of our customs and holidays. So people end up going through the process of learning the new culture. And actually, I did the same thing when I left California and before I moved to the South, which was Texas, and then over here. Um, West Coast thinking and the lifestyle there is completely different than Kentucky or Texas or anywhere else I've lived. So co-cultures are groups of people who share values, customs, ethics, norms, interests, characteristics besides their national citizenship. So it's not just that everyone here is American. It's maybe you're Southern, maybe you're a coastal person, maybe you're from the West Coast. So it's anything that brings you together with other people. So you can be part of multiple cultures. So co-cultures can reflect shared activities, beliefs, or characteristics. It can help you identify multiple cultures, and it could be online. So if you're part of any of these groups online, maybe you sell things to people. People sell Mary Kay, Avon. There's some other companies out there. Or you might be in a group of people with disabilities. I have a pancreas issue, so I'm in a group, various groups actually, of people with pancreas issues that are online. So components of cultures and co-cultures. So cultures vary in their symbols. So a symbol is anything that represents an idea, like the thumbs up sign, like I mentioned before. In the US, it's good. In certain other countries, it is a negative. Flags and national anthems are examples of cultural symbols. Certain colors, like red, white, and blue, would symbolize America. Stars and stripes, you could think of America. Some people think of apple pie, baseball games, football. As far as American football, other cultures, football is actually soccer. So for us, it's football, but for everyone else, it's soccer. So just anything that brings the totality of what America is together. So those could be the symbols. All right, so thinking about cultures and their languages, so there's about 6,800 languages that are used in the world today. And honestly, there are probably more because there's different tribes of people that aren't yet infiltrated or colonized. So their languages aren't either written or they're not accessible to like the Western cultures. And the US is part of a Western dominating culture. The most commonly spoken languages are Chinese, Spanish, and English in that order. So it's important that we have these languages in schools because well, I guess depending on where the person lives, they might need to have access to these various languages or at least translation apps. But there's so many apps nowadays or new technology that someone could speak to you in their language and the technology would translate it for you. So a lot of politicians use that when they go visit other countries, presidents, prime ministers, people like that. So that helps with communication overall worldwide. All right, so cultures vary in their values. So a culture's values are the standards it uses to judge how good, desirable, or beautiful something is. So when it comes to American beauty standards, we have a typical idea of what we believe that is. Just look at Hollywood, just look at movies. Also when it comes to values, like being good to your neighbor, saying please and thank you, saying excuse me if you bump into somebody. So those are things that we deem as desirable and good. The U.S. American culture tends to value equal opportunity, material comfort, practicality and efficiency, achievement, democracy, free enterprise, and individual choice. So some of those you might think more or less when it comes to the American culture, but those are things that America stands for overall. Components of cultures and co-cultures continued. So cultures vary in their norms. So norms are things that we deem as normal in our society, and one of those would be saying excuse me when you bumped into somebody. In some cultures, when you greet people, you'll kiss on both cheeks. So I have family members that are Dominican, and when I see them, like every time I see them, you must kiss on both cheeks or put your cheek against their cheek when you're saying hello. Okay, so how culture affects communication, and it really depends on, the culture someone's from or where they're from. But we have individualistic and collectivistic cultures. So if we think of individualistic cultures, that would be like the US. We are more about pulling ourselves up with our bootstraps, or more about looking out for number one, for our family. We're not really into making sure society is okay as a whole. That's just not really the norm here. But my family members from the Dominican Republic, they are a collectivistic culture. So for them, it's very important that everyone is okay, and no one is okay unless everyone is okay. So for instance, I had a surgery. Um, and I couldn't walk after that. So my Dominican family members went to the point of, they went to the lengths of bathing me, cooking food for me 3 times a day, helping me walk around. So I got to the point where I could walk again. It was like a very extensive surgery. It was years ago. But that is not typical for Americans. We're more like, we'll come visit you, we might cook for you, clean, but it's not going to be like an everyday thing until you feel better or until you get on your feet. We will come when we can, because we have like our own things to deal with, and that's why we're individualistic versus the Dominican culture, where it's collectivistic. Like, no matter if they had other things to do, because they did, jobs and families and things like that, they still made a point to come 3 times a day to make sure I was eating and cleaned and getting rest, and make sure I had my medications or anything else I needed. All right, low context cultures versus high context cultures. So in America, we more so communicate with a low context culture, and that means we just mean what we say what we mean. Time is money, so we're like more quick to getting our message across. Whereas some other cultures, such as in New Zealand, the Maori people, Korea, and then some people in the Chinese culture, for them, it's very important to not be rude. So sometimes they won't be direct or blunt. Whereas for us, it's like, for us, it would be rude, or we feel like someone is lying and concealing something if they don't just say exactly what they mean. We would say you're beating around the bush, just say it. Whereas other cultures, it would be rude to be too direct. So that would be a high context culture. Low power distance cultures versus high power distance cultures. So a low power distance culture would be like the US or Canada or Austria, where we don't really believe that, one person should have all the power. We believe in more of a balance of powers, democracy, all of that. A consensus, which is like a group of people coming together to come up with a common ideal. So we believe more in that, whereas other cultures, they believe in high power distance. And that means that certain people just have more power, and that's okay. So you might have like a monarchy in those places. So that would be like India, Brazil, Singapore. You could even think of and London. So in Europe, so some people are born into the monarchy, and that's just how it is. So they end up having more power than, regular people, quote unquote. All right, so masculine cultures and feminine cultures. So masculine culture are the cultures that place more emphasis on men. I would still consider the U.S. a masculine culture. Like, we have more equality, of course, but as far as when it comes to choosing our presidents or our leaders or people that we respect in certain positions, we look more at men when it comes to that. Broad shoulders, tall, strong looking. If you look at our presidents, that's usually who we end up picking. Or people in leadership, that's just how we view things. So it's more like a masculine culture, but not completely masculine. So machismo, like you might have heard of that when it comes to Mexican culture, where the men, they have the authority, or they have more of the rule. And you can also think of Tunisia, the men there, they have the rule, they have the say. And some of these cultures are really masculine, so where women aren't allowed to drive, they can't wear what they want. So those are some of the more masculine cultures. And then we have feminine cultures where they place a lot of emphasis on nurturing behaviors and quality of life. And they don't really believe in sex differentiated roles. And that would be like Sweden, Chile, the Netherlands. They believe in, you know, people getting things done together however they can get it done together. So like we do have some of that in America, and I would say that's more of the younger generation since, you know, times are changing. But we are not a completely feminine culture because women are not seen as the highest authority in the US currently. Monochronic versus polychronic cultures. So in some cultures, we view time as a commodity. So in the US, we say time is money, like hurry up, get to the point. So we like to be completely on time. So some people say if you're on time, you're late. If you're earlier on time, some people say get there 15 minutes early. So that would be a monochronic culture, and that would be the US. And as far as polychronic cultures, that's when like time is more fluid. So like some people in South Africa, as far as going to meetings and stuff, you just show up when you're ready. And people aren't really offended if you show up like 30 minutes late. You can still say hello. You're not really interrupting. So that's where time is more fluid and less structured. Uncertainty avoiding cultures versus uncertainty accepting cultures. So uncertainty accepting cultures, the one at the bottom, are the ones that are more relaxed, like live and let live, like Jamaica. Everyone is just, you know, just be yourself. Oh, it's fine. And as far as uncertainty avoiding cultures, those are cultures where things are more strict. They have more emphasis on security, and they want to reduce ambiguity. And ambiguity is where things are like confusing. So that would be more like Argentina and Portugal. Like, this is how things should be, this is how they are. Versus like Jamaica, which is the second portion, uncertainty accepting cultures, where they're more relaxed. And the US has a mixture of both, I would say. Okay, when it comes to communicating with cultural awareness, be mindful that people are different. They have different ideals, different cultural values, and that's okay, especially when you're in the healthcare field. You don't want to dissuade your patient with talking to you because maybe they feel like you're disrespecting their culture. Of course, we can't always be fully aware when it comes to different cultures until we're able to learn about them. So we got to be mindful of that. And then also ethnocentrism is where we might feel that our culture is the best and everyone should be like us and should mold into our culture. So we definitely want to avoid that. We should let people be themselves. All right, so we have communication codes as far as idioms, jargon, and gestures. So idioms are basically phrases that don't really mean what they say. Like someone might say, "Oh, you're pulling my leg" when you're in a conversation, and that just means that you believe the person's joking with you. So that would be like a phrase that's an idiom, considered an idiom, and an idiom kind of depends on where you live. So if you live in different parts of the U.S. or if you're from a different country, of course you'd have your own idioms. And then as far as jargon goes, so jargon could be thought of as like slang or code switching. So you might shift between jargon or talking points or slang depending on who you're talking to. So the way I speak in school with my other PhD peers is different than how I speak at home when I'm more relaxed. So my jargon changes. I code switch. And then gestures would be anything that you can use to communicate with somebody from the same culture that you're in. So if I wave hello, we know here it means like hi, or if I motion for someone to come here, they know that means to come toward me. In other cultures, that might mean something different. So when it comes to speaking with various people from different cultures, and remember, I'm not just talking about race or ethnicity, I'm talking about from different areas also, or in different ideals, different eras, as far as ages of when they were born. So all of that is important when it comes to communicating with people. So be flexible and respectful. People are different. People interpret things differently. It could be a learning curve depending on the environment. Expect ambiguity, and that just means that it's okay if things aren't fully clear or confusing, and you could always ask for clarity. Like, hey, I don't know exactly what that slang term meant. Can you explain it? And it's funny because I have to do that sometimes with the new words. So every year, Webster's dictionary basically adds new words into the dictionary. So it's the Oxford Dictionary because they become part of our culture. So if a word is said enough, like on fleek, that was a thing some years ago. So that has actually been added to the dictionary, and there's more terms that have been added to. Or the word selfie. People take selfies all the time. It's part of the culture, especially for young people. And so when words get added, the majority of the time it's from the younger generations. And just know that it's important to adapt to other people and different situations. So it's good to be flexible. And then also appreciate the differences in access to communication technology. So in the US, a lot of us have access to the internet, but in some other countries, that's not really as big of a thing. So just know that some people might understand fully how to use a computer or how to do a PowerPoint, but I know that some of my older students, if they never, had to build a PowerPoint in school or even had access to that, then I know that their PowerPoints is going to be more difficult for them to do versus someone else that might know how to use Prezi or Keynote or something like that. So that would be a difference in culture. Like, yes, we're all in the US when it comes to that, but we're different ages, so all of us might not have the same experiences. And I find it quite fascinating that my baby at 6 months knew to swipe his little finger on my phone because he saw us doing it. So these babies are literally born with a phone in their hands.